Welcome back to Agilify Airwaves, hosted by Scott Teeple, where we're talking about the Global Intelligent Automation Market Report, H2 for 2018, where we talked through quite a few stall points that you will likely encounter through your automation journey. Today I have with me again Kent Andrews, so thanks for joining me today. Kent's been with us since the beginning of time, I guess, around our overall program and execution. So he brings a lot of experience and expertise within this automation space. So today we're talking about the effective execution number 2. So before we get started, Kent, if you wouldn't mind, if you just kind of give us an overview of kind of what Agilify thinks about the effective execution, and what does that mean to us?
Absolutely. So, it's inherent for us to take a solution and want to implement it and try to get to the solve quickly. But there's a piece that's involved in that. There's a life cycle to actually effective execution, and a lot of times that is overlooked. So in our case, we have an entire process that starts with the design authority that we spoke about, but it also is how do we actually show up and create that development or that development piece, or the automation piece. How are we working with the client in this case to bring out the business rules that they're looking to do? What are we doing with documentation across the board? How have we set up the timeline for execution and for delivery of that? That's all part of this execution piece on the front end. On the back end, that work is invaluable, because that is the lifeline, if you will, of the support ops folks who are going to have to support it for its life cycle or its lifetime in production. So without that information, they're going to be having to interact with the business unit and try to extract what the issues are. I mean, these are all things that they can do natively with that information that's given to them. And then on the back end, also, they need to understand where their responsibility stops and where IT, who's been brought in from the beginning, where they actually play as well in this space. And that's important to know. Resolution goes quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as you transition from that first stall point, which is design authority, and you start getting the more coding standards, and you have an understanding of how things are going, the next logical step is do you really want your developers being the ones that's supporting your the automations of the digital workforce? And the answer is probably not, right? And you definitely need to have, we think, some level of release management. How is that being controlled? And then as your program starts to mature, how is your IT organization engaging to really start pushing the envelope around those systems and the systems of record, and how those automations are going to play? And then this idea around governance that kind of sits, kind of over the top. But absolutely, governance is in a next series, so we won't dig into that one.
Right.
Although we would like to get into all of them today, wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
So effective execution, and I think that some of the things that we'd like to bring within this series is around the use cases, and what are some of those trigger points or early warning system things that's going to bring some identification that maybe you're in that stall point. So if you wouldn't mind, how could somebody identify that they may be entering into this effective execution stall point?
It may not hit them until it hits them. And we know from our experience is that if we haven't set up that design authority, and we haven't set up that effective execution model, especially if you come to me and say, hey, I'm supporting my process, I know immediately that you don't have an effective execution model in place, because that would be something that would be handled by that DevOps piece on the support on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, as you grow out the developments or the automations you create, how many can you support physically? I don't remember I put my keys 2 days ago. Do you remember how you developed this?
That is true.
3 weeks ago, 3 months ago.
Not unless I'm putting comments in, right?
Absolutely. But that documentation is extremely important. And when they come to us, our clients come to us and they refer to this kind of challenge, we know immediately that they haven't got these components in place to be effective.
Yeah, that's right. And I think some of the other things that we've got in place, I think, is some health checks where we can come in, we can do some overall assessments of the organization, and maybe even help.
Yeah, and it defines the components that are missing very quickly. Just through a simple interview process, we're able to take a look at what they're currently doing and identify those gaps. One thing that we didn't touch on earlier too is that to provide an effective support mechanism on the back end of your automation, it's important to make sure that those folks have the same training as your developers do. on the front end. So they understand the common language, the common use of that design authority piece, so that they're able to troubleshoot effectively.
That's a great point.
Yeah, because what you don't want to do is, the developer's often running with a brand new sprint to provide value to another customer or within the same organization. You don't want them to have to be pulled away from that to help fix an issue that the support person should be able to do on their own. So it's very important that they have a similar skill set.
That's good. Is there any recommendations that we would have when an organization is to a point within their scale to say, hey, maybe we need to start thinking about another kind of organization or the support piece that's maybe different from my developer piece?
Well, there's a couple of different ways to approach that question. I mean, I think that you'll find in the H2 report that the number 10 comes up a lot, but I think that we know that from experience that you get to about 10 bots and you stall out. It's going to be one of these 13 stall points that's going to get you, probably one of the earlier ones in the set. But really, it comes down to the sponsorship from your leadership. If you're going at this and you're starting with COE, we hear that term a lot. I'm like, how are you doing with your journey on your automation? They're like, well, we're setting up a COE. I'm like, oh, so you've got an 18-month runway with a couple $1 million to throw at this project.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's true.
But if they say, hey, we're trying to put a proof of concept together and get some quick value, then I know that they've taken a little bit better thought at their entry point in automation. So it really comes down to, I would say at the beginning, you always want to think about this if you know of it. And hopefully that's what we're doing today is bringing some awareness around that. I don't think you can start too early, though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So is there anything that we can bring into when we start thinking about the roles and responsibilities of, IT organization? There's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of buzz around, you don't need IT to do this, you just install it and go, and we know that that's not true, right? I think over the history of kind of pulling this in, the IT organization, much like other organizations like audit and are critical and key to the success of an automation program. So if we think through the COE and its roles and responsibilities and how the automation program is being put in place, how the development is done. Now we're talking about the support and operations piece of it, but you still have this critical piece of IT. Right. And if we don't have that support, you're likely not going to have a really smooth, effective exexecution.
Yeah, automation itself is usually an initiative of the business in most cases. Sometimes IT brings it to the table, but in 90% of the cases, it's business that brings this tool to the table. And so, you're going to quickly hear the rumors within the office of, hey, what are they doing? And it feels like IT. Why are they doing what IT would do? So it's very important to make sure that they're brought in right at the very beginning, the vision phase. It says, hey, I need IT representation. We want to show you what we're doing because we need to leverage your infrastructure. But we want to apply this tool, okay? And because of where automation inherently plays, it's not really enough there, meat-wise, for IT to devote a team to it, and the business is going to own that anyway. Mm-hmm. But bringing them in keeps all that, and it's not really automation anxiety. That's another term that we use down the road. But getting them to buy in fully is absolutely priceless to making your being able to scale. I mean, we can throw some machines in the back room and we can stand up automation, but to ultimately scale, especially with a company of size, enterprise size company, we're going to need to have IT involved from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as you've been out on multiple client engagements, is there one that maybe sticks out that you could share, maybe just a little bit of information in their situation and what they were seeing? Yeah,
so one thing that we see often is that, especially when we take a look at the robotic operating model across their companies that are growing, they're 6 months in, they haven't often thought of, what type of engagement mode are they? Are we going to be centralized where we're going to own it all here? Are we going to give, some divisional control out there to our
federated hybrid?
Yeah, there's all types of different ones out there. But the challenge with that is the connectivity piece, the infrastructure piece that has to be leveraged still comes from IT. So even though the actual initiative started with this director, this VP, this business organization, maybe HR, finance brought it in, maybe payroll brought it in, or procurement brought it in, once they see the value of it, scaling that now requires IT. And we've run across that multiple times where we haven't had that buy-in from IT up front. So we have to stop at that point. We stall out. And we now have to back up and have those conversations. The interesting part of that is now you're going, hey, Dad, I did it anyway. It worked.
Mm-hmm.
So now I really want you to help fund the next piece going forward. What do you think?
Yeah,
Immediately
right.
you're not happy, unfortunately.
Right,
you should be,
right,
but you're not. Because
right.
you're like, wait a minute, what else have you been doing?
That's right. That's
and
right.
now we want to
That's
take a look at all that. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's very important for the IT to be involved from the beginning.
That's
Where
great.
my main
No,
point.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I guess in closing, then, is if somebody was thinking that they may be coming into this effective execution stall point, what's the last piece of advice that you would like to share with everyone on this topic?
This is inherently something that we don't know, and so you need to bring in the right partner. You need to bring in the right consultant that has already been there, done that. In our case, being practitioners, we actually have consumed the products internally and then provided this service externally as well. So make sure that you ask these questions up front. Make sure you go through these stall points and say, how did you tackle this? Give me some examples. Give me some use cases. Effective execution. Tell me what it didn't work and how you course corrected. To put developers on site is really easy. To get to a final product that can be handed off to the client is the challenge. Okay, and so don't waste that 6 months with that integrator. Think about these stall points up front as if you were starting from scratch as you brought them in and they handed off the program to you.
Hey, Kent, that's really great advice. And if you are looking for more information on effective execution, please stop out on the Agilify Automation website. And while you're there, we have a maturity assessment that you can take that will kind of outline and give you some helpful hints on where to go next and maybe how you might engage with Agilify. So coming to you next time, we'll be bringing you the next set of stall points, so keep an eye out for them.